Well, I'm Ernest Oldfield. My father was a member of the Black Dyke Band for many, many years, and I'm just going to give a brief history of his lifetime in the band. Well, all I can say is that he was a member of the Black Dyke Band at the turn of the century, and he played with the band all his life. He was a cornet player, and he was very quiet man. Didn't blow his that's silly. Didn't blow his trumpet himself, but he was in the band. He was a back row member of the band all his life. People who know about banding will know what that means. And he wouldn't have anything wrong said about the band. He was that kind of a man. Very Queensbury brought up, Black Dyke Mills brought up, Black Dyke Band. It was all part of the same life for him. I remember it most because they used to go away in those days, and they would go away in April, May, and apart from coming back to the mill for, say, a week, they would be away virtually all summer, going to places like Hyde Park, down on the coast, 2 or 3 places on the coast, and then they'd take the bus then and go up to Scotland and do Glasgow, Edinburgh, Dunfermline, come back home, maybe spend a week in the mill doing their own job. He was a fitter, an engineering fitter. Then they went back again out somewhere else, you know. And but in those days, it was all in Britain. It wasn't going abroad and things like that. So it was, well, mother and I had 2 sisters of my mother. Of course, all summer we didn't see my dad hardly. He just came, spent a week perhaps at home, and then go. Wouldn't see him. So my mother had a funny existence really. In winter it weren't too bad, but in summer. And so we used to have to go with my aunties and her children because he was never here, wasn't my dad. He was with the band, and that meant everything, you know. And then, then the contests used to come along every year. 2 contests, 2 main contests. One was the Crystal Palace, and the other one was the Bellevue. And that was a high spot for the village because I remember coming home when they'd won. The village used to turn out, and if they'd been to London, then of course they'd come back by their coach. They had a coach, and they'd get there at any time. But when they'd been to Bellevue, of course, if they won, of course they could have a good do coming home, stop for a drink, and then come back to the village. And I remember as a little lad watching them marching. I don't know whether you know where the terminus is in Queensbury, but they used to get off the bus there and march down the village to the Stag. That's at the crossroads there. They used to march down, and all the village was out, and it might be 9, 10 o'clock at night, like, by the time they got into the village. Sometimes a little bit worse for wear, 1 or 2 of them, you know. And we had a kind of an atmosphere in the village, you know. People turned out, even at that time of night, you know. And we used to play in front of the Stag. There's all things now which you can't get on with a car and that, but in that it was just an open space, and they used to be there, and they used to go, John Henry Bateman, who was the electrician at the mill, used to go up in the pub room and set up his microphone and that kind of thing, and then the band used to come and play in front of the pub there, in front of the Is it still called the Stag's Head?
No.
Well, anyway, it was called the Stag, and they played in front of there, and lots of clapping, and if they could get one of the Fosters, Mr. Ronald or someone like that, would be there and make a little speech, and then we all went home, you know. So those were the days when brass banding was at its height, you know, when some of the literature I have there, you can see all the names of the old brass band, Wingerts and not Fair Aviation so much, they weren't in go, not so much, but Foden's was, Black Dyke, Wingerts, all these bands, Brighouse and Rastrick, all these bands were on the circuit, as they called it, you know, playing at all these competitions. As well as competitions, playing in parks and places like that, you know. And they used to go to the terminus at Queensbury, and then get out of the bus and then have a parade down, you know, very, very parochial at the time, you know. It was all Queensbury and Black Dyke, because of course the mill was the centre of nearly everything in the mill. He didn't practice at home, he practiced in the band room. I never knew whether it was a bit of embarrassment or whether he didn't like it or what, but or he thought we'd had enough of it at home, you know. So he used to practice in the band room. If he wanted to practice, he'd go on there and practice on there. Not like some of them who played at home all day long, you know, like all evenings. Some of them would be, say if it was a big contest, they'd be practicing individually, but he used to go on the band room and do it. I don't know whether he was a bit embarrassed or what, I don't know, I've no idea. I can't ever remember asking him why he didn't practice at home much. But I did. In fact, I used to practice, because I played a bit as a young lad, and I used to play, and my mother used to eventually say, for God's sake, will you come down and stop that noise, because it wasn't very good at time when I was learning, you know. So we were steeped in brass bands in those days. Not only the village, I mean, not only us, but the village, you know, everybody knew, and most people knew people who worked at the mill and played in the band, you see. It was a local thing. It was on a Sunday night, it used to be, I think it was Sunday night, and we used to go to the Victoria Hall, and we used to wait for the soloists, you know, the trombone solo, the euphonium solo, and the main man, you know. And that's where as young lads and young lads in the band, the junior band and that, you know, could hear these people. And I remember a man called Jackson. Anyway, I forget his first name, but he was a solo cornet player. And he used to, in the Victoria Hall, there's a stage. Have you ever been in there? Yeah, there's a stage. And I remember him, and I was absolutely amazed because, hey, what do they call him? Anyway, he used to announce so-and-so play this solo. And it'd be a big cornet solo, you know. And he used to stand up there, and he used to walk around the stage, front of the stage, no music or anything. Well, such as me, having difficulty getting through the scales, you know, he used to just be able to play these, and they weren't little hymn tunes or anything, they were great big solos, cornet solos, you know. He could play the whole lot without. And then I remember before him there was Owen Bottomley, who was one of my friend's father, of course, he was in the band, and he played for years, conducted by Arthur O. Pierce, you know, who was the bandmaster. I could tell you, I could go on for brings back all sorts of memories as you're going along, you know. As I say, you know, Arthur Pierce worked, see, they all worked in the mill. There were no professional. Even the professional conductor, they had to get him from away they had their own conductor, and then when they went to a big contest, they brought this man in, well, in my day, a fella called Halliwell, and he came for the last few rehearsals and polished the thing up for the contest, you know. Well, Arthur Pearce, even though he was a bandmaster, he worked on a lathe in the mill, in the millwright shop where I was an electrician in those days, and he worked there, and he had permission from the directors. I'll never forget him telling me that if anybody came to see him about band, he could stop his job and take this man up to the band room, which wasn't far away. You'll have shown him where the band room is, have you? Or do you know? Mm. Yeah, well, he'd walk him up to there and play. And well, I remember, the only thing I remember about Arthur, really, Arthur O. Pearce, he was always known as, you know, Arthur O. Pearce, that a man came to audition for Black Dyke as a cornet player, and he came to down to the shop where we were and asked for Arthur, and out he went and up to the band room. Came back, absolutely busting with laughing. I said, what's the matter then? He said, oh, this was a new one. He said, we got up to the band room and this fella got this cornet and he just had it wrapped in a piece of green stuff, you know, like cloth. He had it wrapped up, it wasn't in a case, he had it wrapped up under his arm. So he took it out, unwrapped it, and then blew a few notes like they do, you know. And then Arthur got, I never forgot this story. It's the beginning of Life Divine, and it starts on, I think it's top A, and quite a bit. And he popped it down and said, righto, let's hear you play then. Play that as good as you can. He just took one look at it, wrapped the cornet into his, put it under his arm and said, it's not bloody cornet players want here, it's fiddlers you want. He says it's bloody violin players you want here. You don't want brass instruments. And then he walked out. So Arthur said, I never heard him play a note really, but it took all morning nearly to get rid of this chap. Aye, so you see, there's all sorts of things coming back in my mind now. You know, so that was it. I mean, we used to go up those steps at the side, wooden steps. I mean, it's not there now, but there was a door from the mill, from the village, and you went up a long passage and then up some wooden steps, and then along, and then there was just like a big opening. And when we were lads, or since, you could go and sit there, and there was room for half a dozen people to sit on those wicker baskets that have music and that, and you could sit there, but you couldn't see hardly, you know, unless you were very popular and new, or got there very early and got in behind this opening. You couldn't see anything. You could hear it all right, you know. And what amazes me and all, another thing which amazes me, which I noticed the other day, when I used to go down to watch them rehearse, he had the drummer would be at the back by the windows, and if it was a concert they were going, it was all right, you know, he would do his stuff. But if it was a contest in those days, to cover up any sounds that might be a bit shouldn't be there, they didn't have the drummer, and he didn't play in a contest, and so he would sit at the back. And it was all right for him. All the time they were rehearsing for this big contest. Well, now, when you go to see them now, there's about 4 of them at the back. You know, there's some, and they're all playing all sorts. They're playing those tubular bells, they're playing the drums, they're playing timpani, they have timpani, which he never had out like that in the, you had this one drummer and a drummer, you know, and with his foot and his 2 sticks. So that's all changed, you see, during my lifetime. Instead of being just go down the band room and it was always the same, it was always there, you know. And in fact, I well remember in my earlier days, they sat on buffets, you know, tall 3-legged buffet things in the band, rehearsing. Well, now we see they sit on chairs and it's all luxury now, so it's all sorts comes into your mind as you're thinking about things. But it was never one for. Well, it was never a top man in the band, so it was never pushing me. And I went and played in the junior band for my boy. And then when I passed to go to Grange High School in Bradford, he said, well, he was very broad. That's it. That doesn't play anymore seriously. Play as much as you want for your fun, but I don't want you spending time in band. There's no for banding. He used to say, I can just hear him now, there's no for banding these days, you see, because things were going on then and there weren't as much of the bands all over, and so I had to give up playing, learning. I mean, he's very straight and tell sort of a man he was. He sent me to Owen Bottomley, who was the solo cornet player, for lessons. Even though he played in the Black Dyke himself, he wouldn't take lessons. He wouldn't take anybody for lessons, And so I used to go and Owen used, and then he knocked that on the head, you see. You aren't going to Owen anymore. Play for your own mouth, but keep on at school. That was what his thing was, which was quite right, I presume, at the time. As a little lad, you don't bother too much, do you? Either way, it didn't matter to me, as long as... there were good days. I always felt a bit sorry for my mother because she always got the rough end of the stick, because she was always there. I mean, when it was Armistice Day, they never had they weren't allowed by the mill. They weren't allowed to go anywhere else to play. They played at Queensberry and did the parade from Queensberry, with the scouts and everybody and the councillors and that. Well, I can remember them getting all dressed up. My sister had two sisters, you see, both in the, well, one was in the Brownies and the other in the Guides most of the time. And then I was in the Scouts or in the Boys Brigade. It depended whether I was playing the cornet in the Boys Brigade or whether I was in the Scouts playing a bugle, but it didn't matter. And then my dad went out in uniform, of course, and my mother was left to get everything, get us all ready, get us all out of the house, and then start and do all the dinner, I always felt, later on in life, I felt a bit sorry for her, We had all the easy part, and she stuck on here, So she was a very Yorkshire, Queensberry woman anyway, And so was my dad, My dad had he was a strong Labour man, and he wouldn't hear of anybody who wasn't, he just wiped them out, not interested in them, But, yeah, he was one of these that, my dad, he had his playing, and he had liked a pint, and so he went out and had a drink when he wanted one, and his life just went on with the mill, the band, and the mill and the band, and the beauty of it was that every now and again the band took him out to somewhere for a week or two, and playing all around in bandstands, It sounded real, at the time. So, I can remember all sorts of things happening, with what was I going to say then? It was as I say, he was a typical father, if you like, in a village like this. That you were either a councillor and you were up there, or else you worked at the mill and you were here, and that was it. So he was, and I say he hadn't much patience with people that he didn't agree with, not even me, and so I had to be fairly on the ball, or otherwise He didn't used to say much in the house because with two girls and me and my mother, there were enough people shouting and bawling and trying to get us to do things, you know. But he would sit in his chair, and then all of a sudden if he said, "That's enough," then we all knew that was enough, including my mother and all, you know, like, that's enough. But it was all right. It was a good bringing up, really, you know, like, because he seemed to, even though I used to think later on, he was a bit, as you might say, not able to slip his things, you know, what he thought was good, like the fact that you went to, like me, you passed your certificates, you went to grammar school, blah, blah, blah. He thought that was real. That was the thing, and somebody told him, you know, that's what your lad wants to do, and that was it, you know. And in fact, I passed for Bradford Grammar School, and when one of his mates in the band said, "Oh, don't let your lad go there, costs a bloody fortune," you know. and he said, he didn't swear much, didn't he? He swore in the mill, didn't swear at home. And he said, "How do you mean?" He said, "Oh, well, you have rugby stuff to buy, cricket stuff to buy, they go on trips, there's all sorts of things, you know." And it frightened my dad to death. And I had one or two certificates which I'd got at the lower school, you know. I had an entrance to Bradford Grammar School anyway, and I had what they call a county minor scholarship, which the county paid. So, but he wouldn't hear of it. This fella put him off. So I went to Grange High School instead, you know, on the way to Bradford. So that was not a letdown because things worked out. Oh, I'm still here, you know. So, but I mean, at the time, I didn't bother. I just went wherever he said, you know. But later on in life, I was thinking, oh, just imagine if I'd have gone to Bradford Grammar School, I might have gone anywhere, you know. So you can't tell. But when you're a little lad, you don't know, you know. You just, my dad said, "Oh, well, you'll go to Grange." All right, oh, Dad, and that was it. You go to Grange, that was it. So and there they had an orchestra. When I was there, they had a music teacher who was very keen on instruments and that. So of course me and another lad played the trumpet, and one of my biggest big things of fame was that playing in the Eastbrook Hall. That was in Bradford, you know. It's not there now, like, but it was Eastbrook Hall, and one of the things was trumpet voluntary. Well, we played it reasonably well, let's put it that way, you know. Me and this other young lad, both of us stood up there playing trumpet voluntary. I don't know how I got the nerve to do it. Well, the teacher told us to do it, you know, and that'll be it. So that was one of my orchestral places, you know. I don't like saying this, but I think it was true. He thought that children's place was in, you know, we should be there. And you're quiet, you know, you don't make a lot of noise and that kind of thing, you know, don't upset people and that kind of thing. Whereas some join in everything, didn't they? I mean, nowadays, good gracious me, kids they don't sit down for the miles, all this lot. You know, I could go, when I look at my grandchildren and think about when I was a kid, I mean, there's no comparison at all, you know. So it's... things move on and that's it. You can't do anything. I don't ever remember asking him a lot of things. And anything I wanted to know about the band, there were plenty of people to ask, even if he wouldn't tell me, you know, like. So
did he work in the mill all his life?
Yeah. I think when he was an apprentice, he worked for a firm in Halifax, but I forget who it is. But you could really say all his life he worked for Blackdyke. And he died in Blackdyke and all. Well, he didn't, he died at home, you know, like, but I mean, he finished in Blackdyke and then he went, and I thought, in fact, I always feel a little bit guilty because he died at 69. And I remember saying to the wife, well, he's had a very fair innings anyway. And when I said that, And then when I got to be 70 myself, I was saying to my wife was still living. I said, do you remember when I used to say my dad had a good life at 69, you know, like I'm 75 or so, going on 80 then. I said, so it just shows, you know, I mean, I thought he'd had a good life, but see, 69 was nothing. Well, it's nothing now, is it? It was in those days, like people did die a lot younger than what they do today.
Can you remember that?
No, he just played and went. Oh no, he played in the junior band, Black Dyke Junior Band. He played on cornet, and then eventually got a job at the mill, which was the standard thing, you know, in this village. Got a job at the mill and into the band, and that was it, you know. No, he'd have what do you call it? When you're showing yourself what you can do, not an interview.
An audition.
An audit, exactly. Thank you, love. Yeah, he'd have an audition, I presume, but I never knew whether he had, you know. But he was always there when I was born. When I was born, you see, he was always there, and he was always in the band, and he was always going off with the band, and it just kind of went on. It wasn't any strange thing. And friends of mine who were also had a father in the band, just the same, it didn't worry them either. They just went about the business, you know, like I went to school and our fathers just went off for summer, summer in the sun, you know. Aye, you know, so it was quite an experience to have somebody in the band and you were there, you know, because in the village, like, it was so popular as well. I mean, everybody knew the band and everybody knew everybody else. Everybody knew all the relations of all the men who played in there, you know. And whose lad are you then, you know? Who's your father? Oh, Arthur Oldfield. Oh, I know him. I've known him all my life, you know. That kind of thing, you know. It was very parochial. They weren't coming in from even Bradford and places like that. One or two who came to the mill and played in the band who didn't any work in Queensbury or live in Queensbury, but they were very few and far between. The band was full of people who lived in this village or worked in this village, you know. So it was Black Dyke Mills, you know, Black Dyke Mills, and that was the end of it, the beginning and end of it.